Mike Memoli, what should we expect to hear from the president tomorrow night on this topic?
Well, Nicole, based on my conversations with White House officials and those my colleagues on the White House beat for NBC are having as well, I think it's clear that policing reform and the larger issues of racial justice in this country are going to be a more significant part of this president's first joint address to a joint speech to Congress than any joint address from a recent president in recent memory. And there's a very important reason for that, Nicole. As we mark the 100th day of this administration this week, obviously a lot of the planning in the transition was geared around tackling the first major crisis that this president inherited, and that is, of course, COVID. This speech, though, tomorrow is meant to be something of a pivot point where they lay out their additional priorities. And for Joe Biden especially, he feels a real obligation to deliver on the promises he made, not just to voters in this country, but specifically to the Floyd family. Around this time a year ago, when Biden's campaign had to be grounded by the pandemic, it was Floyd's death and the demonstrations that followed that led Biden out on the campaign trail, led him to go to Houston for the first time on a plane in the pandemic era to meet with the Floyd family. That connection that he forged with the Floyd family has continued, and he feels a real obligation. And as we look in that chamber tomorrow night, Nicole, it's going to look very different than past speeches to Congress for a president. And one of them is that the First Lady will not be able to have guests sitting with her that a president would refer to. But I was texting with a White House official last week after the Chauvin verdict, and I think it's certainly a good bet that had the White House had the ability to have guests in the gallery, you would have maybe seen Gianna Floyd, Floyd's daughter, who, as President Biden has referred to often, said, "My daddy changed the world," and look for the president to try to give his lift to the negotiations that are underway. And the White House feels, as the Senate Majority Leader said today, they are making progress. The White House has real confidence in Karen Bass, the Congresswoman from California, Cory Booker, who is meeting with Tim Scott. And it's important to note, I think Republicans see this as an important priority. The selection of Tim Scott as the Republican to respond to the president's speech tomorrow also shows that they see this as something that needs to get done. That's why, unlike a lot of other issues, Republicans are really giving Scott a real legwork to go into these negotiations with their colleagues. And I think his endorsement, if a breakthrough is made, will be significant.
Well, that was my question for you, Mike Memoli. I mean, Tim Scott isn't just the Republican Party's sort of designee for these negotiations. He seems to be negotiating in good faith on his own part. He's been selected to respond, as you said, tomorrow night. But there is certainly a cacophony of voices on the right already undermining the very idea that police reform in America is necessary. Is the White House sort of aware of or intent on trying to do anything to give Tim Scott any extra running room, or are they just staying out of the negotiations? What is their strategy with that?
Yeah, I mean, the way this was described to me in the transition was that depending on what happened in those Georgia runoffs, the blueprint moving forward for a George Floyd updated Justice and Policing Act would either be the Democratic version from the House that passed last year with some modifications to bring Republicans along, or the Tim Scott version that was proposed last year, introduced in the Senate with some modifications. Now, obviously, Democrats won those runoffs. Democrats do have control, but I think they do see Tim Scott here as an important player. And the stumbling block, though, of course, Nicole, is this issue of qualified immunity. And there was a warning sign today about just how far Tim Scott can go. Leanne Caldwell, our colleague on Capitol Hill, asked Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell about where negotiations were heading, and he expressed some concern about that. The White House, for its part today, was asked if they were prepared to compromise on that issue as well, and they said they weren't going to be negotiating from the podium. But that's a very big and important sticking point, and hopefully they're making progress from both sides' perspective.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.